Hello. I'm delighted to have the chance to provide some information to community groups and people in San Jose about the fiscal challenges that the city has confronted over the last several years. First, let me introduce myself. My name is Bob Brownstein. I've lived in San Jose for about 35 years. For 12 years, I served as the Chief of Staff of County Supervisor Suzanne Wilson and helped balance the county budget. For 8 years, I was Budget Director for San Jose Mayor Susan Hammer. During that time, I balanced the San Jose budget 8 times, each time with a unanimous vote of the City Council. And that included some difficult times during the recession of the early 1990s. Yet despite the recession, we managed to expand public safety services in San Jose. We created the Mayor's Gang Task Force. We established new anti-gang programs. We began the transformation of the medical emergency response system from one based on emergency medical technicians to one based on fully trained paramedics. I've also worked with community groups to analyze local government budgets in other jurisdictions. Based on that experience, I believe the leaders of San Jose have made extremely serious mistakes in responding to what were unquestionably difficult fiscal challenges that followed the national economic collapse of 2008. Those mistakes have produced damaging consequences, particularly in regard to public safety and in responses to emergency situations in San Jose. What I'd like to do today is to explain what happened. To the greatest extent I can, I'll use the city's own data or information from critics of public employee pensions or analyses generated from licensed actuaries. So what was the fundamental error that the city made? Well, if you look at this slide, it says what I believe the mistake was. And I couldn't find a famous person to make this quote, so I said it myself. When a problem is complex and elected officials believe it is simple, bad things are likely to happen. So what was the problem that Mayor Reed and a majority of the City Council oversimplified? Well, look at this next slide. These are the mayor's own words. They were part of the ballot statement that he submitted for Measure W, which was on the ballot in 2010. He said, "Have you ever wondered why your street isn't paved, your library is closed, your neighborhood park is run down, firefighters are being laid off?" The answer is simple. The city of San Jose's pension costs are unsustainable. Now, if you have an unbelievably good memory, you'll know you never saw this statement in the ballot pamphlet you received in 2010. That's because a Superior Court judge declared it to be false and misleading and ordered that it be changed. But that's what the mayor wrote, and that's what he wanted you to see. The mayor defined the city's fiscal problem as simple, those are his words, as simple as a result of excessive compensation of city staff. He was empirically wrong. That's why the judge ordered the ballot argument to be changed. And because he made that mistake, very bad things have happened to the entire city of San Jose. Look at this slide, which shows the price we've paid and are paying in loss and in risk. This is not a slide from the police officer organization. It's a slide that Ed Chicada, the new city manager, presented to the City Council a few weeks ago in a study session. It shows arrests way down, response time frighteningly up. And this next slide shows crime increasing in our neighborhoods, and the city manager has acknowledged these numbers as well. I told you that the mayor was wrong and that the city's problems, the fiscal problems that San Jose faced, were complex. Now let me prove it. At the heart of San Jose's fiscal difficulties is an extremely low tax base. This is the result of thoughtless land use planning in the 60s and 70s when the city wildly embraced urban sprawl. Look at this slide. which shows San Jose's sales taxes per capita versus the rest of the county. San Jose is much lower than the other urban cities. Look at this next slide, which shows San Jose's property taxes per capita, again versus the rest of the county, and again, San Jose's tax base is shown to be extraordinarily low. And these are the city manager's slides. He just produced them a few weeks ago, although this disparity has been known for at least the past 25 years. Another major cause of the fiscal problem we've experienced is the major decline in tax revenues that followed the deep recession beginning in 2009. If you look at this slide, it shows that the losses in sales and property taxes were over $40 million. Now, I don't present this data to suggest that pensions were not a major cause of the city's fiscal problems. They were a cause of those problems. But the problem included pensions plus a weak tax base, plus lost tax revenues, plus a host of other factors, including not paying the full normal cost when pension funds were flush, and building new facilities without planning how to pay for staffing, and merging redevelopment project areas so tax increment was siphoned away from industrial growth areas to support the downtown. And here is probably the most important point I want to make in this presentation. What's vital to understand is not just that a complex problem had multiple causes, but that those factors affect each other. How do you escape from a weak tax base? You commit to an economic development strategy. Now that takes time, even if a city invests its resources wisely, which San Jose did not always do. But for an economic development strategy to succeed, your city has to be a place where people want to live, where they want to raise a family, where they want to work, where they want to start a business. And that requires quality city services. No one will invest in a city where neighborhoods are unsafe, libraries are closed, parks are a mess, and prompt emergency services cannot be relied upon. Economic development officials call this the virtuous cycle. Quality public services attract economic growth, which generates more tax revenue, which pays for quality city services. So San Jose did have a challenge. It had to balance its budgets, promote economic development, and recruit and retain quality personnel. And it had to do that in a competitive labor market in which those other better funded jurisdictions compete for personnel. It's a tough task, but San Jose met that challenge by deliberately deciding to be an employer of choice. City managers like Les White knew San Jose, with a weak tax base, couldn't possibly have the same numbers of staff as other cities. But we could have people of the highest quality. We could do that by putting the money we did have into salaries and benefits, and by treating our employees with respect, like the skilled and dedicated people that they are, getting the respect that they deserve. Mayor and city council after mayor and city council worked hard to make this strategy work, because they knew that a failure to retain top talent with our low staff numbers would mean a decline in the quality of city services, and the virtuous cycle would be broken. Unfortunately, that's exactly what's happening in San Jose today. Look at this slide. These are the words of Matt Mahood, the CEO of the Chamber of Commerce. He is no friend of public employee unions, but he says businesses are rethinking their presence in our city, wondering if the crime problem will force them to leave town. The oversimplification of San Jose's fiscal problem led Mayor Reed and his allies to completely miss the key relationship between compensation and quality of personnel and quality of services. And when I say completely miss the relationship, I am not exaggerating. Look at this slide. The person I'm quoting is Joe Nation, a Stanford researcher who views public employee pensions as a major problem and is highly critical of public employee unions. But even he recognized it makes no sense to demand that employees make a higher pension contribution until you do a comprehensive survey and determine whether your demands will damage your ability to recruit and retain quality staff. San Jose's leaders read Joe Nation's report, but they didn't listen to his warning. Another example. Every year the city did surveys asking residents how should the city respond to budget shortfalls. They asked, which strategy do you prefer? Reducing existing services, raising additional revenue, including taxes and fees, or reducing city employee compensation and retirement benefits. People like me repeatedly argued that's a false set of alternatives. Reducing compensation affects existing services, and that's exactly what's happened in our police department. Compensation reductions produced an exodus of staff and devastated our public safety services. But our warnings were ignored, and now our city is unsafe. I emphasized earlier the importance of respect for the people who work for the city. How would you feel if you were a police officer in San Jose, and you read the provisions of Measure B regarding disability pensions? If you're seriously injured on the job, say you're shot by a burglar and paralyzed from the waist down, Measure B says if you can't do the duties of a cop, you don't get a disability pension if there's any job in the police department that you can do, no matter how low the pay or how much you dislike the role. But even worse, if the city has such a job on the books, but they're all filled, they have no vacancy, you still are denied the disability pension. So you're left with no city job and no disability pension. What happened to the gratitude and respect due someone whose life has been shattered trying to protect us? As I've witnessed the way the city has operated these last few years, I've asked myself, what could possibly justify the mayor and city council's failure to work towards both important objectives, fiscal stability and a quality workforce? And I can only think of two theoretical answers, and neither is true. The first is that city unions refuse to negotiate. I personally know that isn't true. When the city first encountered fiscal trouble in 2009, MEF, the largest non-public safety union, had a multi-year contract with guaranteed raises. The city asked the union to reopen their contract and give back their raise, essentially to take $8 million from their members and give it to the San Jose taxpayers. I personally met with MEF members in their homes and urged them to help the city, and they agreed, believing that the old relationship of mutual respect still existed in San Jose. But they were wrong. The relationship didn't exist, and it was the city that broke the relationship. It was the city government that chose to abandon the philosophy of mutual respect and refused to engage in good faith negotiations year after year. The other possible reason why the city didn't try and achieve both objectives was that the pension problem was so massive that only draconian solutions could work. But the fact is, though the pension costs are significant, they are nowhere near the $650 million figure repeatedly cited by Mayor Reed. Chiron, the actuarial firm hired by the pension boards, has done 20-year projections for the city's contributions to both of the city's pension funds. Their analysis shows pension costs peak in about 10 years and then decline significantly. 20 years from now, pension costs will be $40 million lower than they are today. These calculations do include the two-tier pension levels which the city applies to most unions, but they don't include the denial of vested rights under Measure B. In other words, without Measure B's core provisions, provisions that have driven away skilled personnel, and provisions which have been overturned in court, the city's pension costs will still be going down. The argument that Measure B was needed or pension costs would be unsustainable is simply false. What is frustrating as one reviews the city budget is that the city leaders have not just made fundamental mistakes that have put public safety at risk, they also haven't even used the funds they do have to at least mitigate the problems that they caused. Restoring public safety services should be an overwhelming priority, but look at the city's budget decisions. They gave a $6 million subsidy to a downtown business when their own analysis showed the project would return less than $50,000 a year in new tax revenues. They prepaid a $2.2 million loan from their own sewage treatment plant, despite pleas from community groups to use that money for police. The city could have easily deferred payment of the loan. And the failure to make public safety a priority goes on. Look at the mayor's most recent message, his March message of this year. In San Jose, construction excise tax revenues can be used for police and fire services. The tax is generating $9 million more than was anticipated. The mayor directs the city manager to use the tax primarily, these extra tax revenues, for unfunded transportation infrastructure in North San Jose and downtown, instead of for public safety. Reserves often make sense, but the mayor wants the budget reserves to not only cover any shortfall next year, but also for any shortfall for the year after that. History shows the city's excess fund balances can easily cover any second-year shortfall. Last year, the mayor handed the Downtown Association a one-time grant of $250,000 to do work to serve its member businesses, work that those member businesses should pay for themselves. This year, he wants to have that appropriation extended into perpetuity, and he wants the subsidy to be expanded even further. Let me conclude with a brief summation. To become a safe and prosperous city again, San Jose needs to return to the strategy that works. City leaders need to emphasize both fiscal stability and maintaining the skilled and experienced staff that are essential for quality services and for economic growth. Measure B constituted a reversal of this successful strategy. And the way to move forward is through the hard work of forging common goals and finding ways to collaborate even when everyone doesn't agree. It's been done before, and it can be done and should be done again. Thank you for listening.
Questions or comments? Or maybe you'd like a presentation of San Jose by the Numbers for your community group or neighborhood association. Contact us, info@sanjosebythenumbers.com. You can also see how your neighborhood compares. Visit us on the web, sanjosebythenumbers.com, or better yet, like us on Facebook.